Have you ever sat in a hospital bed for 11 days, stared at the ceiling every single night, and kept telling yourself that the moment you walked out those doors, things would finally be different? That was me. 63 years old, a triple bypass behind me, a scar running down the center of my chest like a road nobody asked to travel, and I kept thinking, my son will be there. That's what got me through. Not the nurses, not the medication drip, not the cardiac rehab exercises they made me do in the hallway with socks on. It was that image. My son's face in the pickup area outside Cleveland Clinic's main entrance, passenger door open, maybe a cup of decent coffee waiting on the console, because he knew how bad hospital coffee was. I had that image so clearly I could almost smell the coffee. He never showed up. My name is not important right now. What matters is that I spent 41 years as a structural engineer, retired in 2019, and somewhere between my wife passing from ovarian cancer in the spring of 2021 and me nearly dying on an operating table 14 months later, I lost the thread of what my family was supposed to be. My wife's name was June. Not the June in any other story you've heard. My June. She made biscuits on Sunday mornings without a recipe. She remembered the name of every person she'd ever met. She laughed at things that weren't funny just to make other people feel less embarrassed. When she died, I didn't know what to do with my hands. I'm serious. I'd stand in the kitchen and I'd just look at them like they belonged to someone else. My son, I'll call him by his role because that's all he turned out to be, my son, he was there when June died. He flew in from Phoenix, helped me plan the service, cried real tears at the graveside. I believe those tears. I still want to believe them. What I didn't know then was that his wife, my daughter-in-law, a woman I had welcomed into this family, helped them buy their first house, floated them a $40,000 loan in 2018 that they never paid back, and I never pressed them on, had already been working on him. Quietly, steadily, the way water works on limestone. You don't see the erosion until the whole thing collapses. The heart attack happened on a Tuesday in March. I was shoveling the front walk. It wasn't even that much snow. An inch, maybe two. But I pushed the shovel wrong, felt a strange pressure in my chest that I told myself was nothing, went inside, sat down at the kitchen table, and woke up in an ambulance. They told me later my neighbor, a retired school teacher named Dottie, who watches the street like it's her personal responsibility, saw me through the window, slumped over the table, and called 911 immediately. Dottie Halverson, 71 years old and sharp as a tack. She probably saved my life, and I hadn't done a single thing to deserve that from her, except wave when I got the mail. The surgery was the next morning, triple bypass. I was under for 6 hours. My son was notified. He confirmed receipt of the message. That's the phrase the hospital social worker used when I asked. He confirmed receipt. Like I was a package. He didn't come. I told myself there must be a reason. Flight prices in March are high. He had work obligations. My daughter-in-law must be dealing with something. I manufactured 11 days' worth of excuses on his behalf while I lay in that bed, and I was good at it because when you love someone you become very skilled at explaining away the things that hurt you. The morning they discharged me, I got dressed in the clothes Dottie had brought from my house. She'd gotten the spare key from under the ceramic frog on the porch, a hiding spot June had chosen in 1987. And I sat in the discharge chair by the front entrance and I waited. I waited an hour and 20 minutes. The hospital volunteer who ran the door, a retired postal worker named Stan who wore a red vest and looked like he'd seen everything twice, kept glancing at me every few minutes. Not in a pitying way, in a watching out for me way. After the first hour he brought me a bottle of water without being asked. I had my phone. I had called my son twice. He'd texted back. Running late, figured you'd grab an Uber. I was 63 years old. I had just had open heart surgery. I had $47 in my wallet, and my phone battery was at 11%. I was trying to figure out how to open the Uber app. June always handled that, and I'd never learned it properly. When someone sat down in the chair next to me, I didn't look up right away. I assumed it was another patient waiting for their ride. But the person didn't move, didn't look at their phone, just sat there with the particular stillness of someone who had something to say and was choosing their moment. I finally looked over. A man, maybe late 40s, in a good coat, the kind you buy when you've stopped worrying about money. Clean-shaven. Eyes that looked like they'd been through a few things and come out the other side steadier for it. He was looking at me. "Excuse me," he said. "Are you Frank Kincaid?" I hadn't been called that by a stranger in years. "I am." He nodded slowly, like he was confirming something he already knew. You probably don't remember me. I looked at him. Nothing. 1998, he said. Youngstown. You were the site supervisor on the Meridian Warehouse project. I was 22. I'd just been let go from my second job in a year, and I showed up to that site looking for day labor, and you gave me a position when you didn't have to. Kept me on for 4 months. Wrote me a reference letter when the project ended. He paused. That letter got me into the apprenticeship program at the Union Hall. That apprenticeship got me into night school. Night school got me a degree. That degree got me into the contracting business. He reached into his coat pocket and put a business card on the armrest between us. I looked at it. Dwayne Aldrich, principal. Aldrich and Moreno Construction Group, Cleveland, OH. I remembered him then. Not completely. But the shape of the memory was there. A young guy, eager, showed up every day before anyone else, asked questions that were actually good questions. I'd written the letter because he'd earned it. I didn't think about it again after that. What are you doing here? I asked. My business partner had knee surgery this morning, he said. I'm waiting for him. He paused. Why are you sitting here alone? I didn't want to answer that. I looked at my phone. 10% now. My ride fell through, I said. He looked at my discharge paperwork, visible through the plastic hospital bag on my lap. Then he looked at my face. He didn't say anything for a moment. Let me drive you home, he said. You're waiting for your partner. His wife just texted me. She's on her way. He doesn't need me. He stood up. Come on, where do you live? He drove a dark green Range Rover. It was clean inside the way cars are clean when someone cares about them. He'd lived in Akron for 12 years, he said. Built up the company with his partner, a man named Gil Moreno he'd met at that same Union Hall. They had 38 employees now. Did commercial construction, mostly warehouses and distribution centers, which I found quietly funny given where this had all started. I told him about June. I don't know why I told him. I hadn't talked about her much with anyone, but it came out on the highway somewhere between the exit for I-77 and the one for my neighborhood, and once it started I couldn't stop it. He just listened. Didn't fill the silences with noise. Didn't say she was in a better place. Didn't say at least you had all those years. He just let me talk. When we pulled into my driveway, he sat there for a moment after putting it in park. Your son didn't come, he said. It wasn't a question. Something came up, I said. The words sounded hollow even to me. He nodded. He wasn't buying it, but he wasn't going to push. Is there someone who checks on you? Neighbor? Friend? Dottie, next door. Good. He got out and walked me to the door, waited while I found my key. When I got inside and turned on the entry light, he said, I'm going to give you my direct number. Not the office line, my cell. If you need anything, grocery run, ride to a follow-up appointment, anything, you call me. I mean that. You don't owe me anything, I said. No, he agreed. I don't. That's why I'm offering. I didn't call him for 2 weeks. I did cardiac rehab 3 times a week at a facility on Chagrin Boulevard. Dottie drove me twice. The third time I took a cab. I ate the meals my cardiologist had approved. I walked the length of my street and back every afternoon, even the days when the wind came off the lake like a personal insult. I did everything right. My son called me 4 times in those 2 weeks. Short calls. Checking in, he said. His voices had a particular quality in those calls. Careful, managed, like someone reading from a script. I noticed it but didn't name it. It was on a Thursday during my 3rd week home that the certified letter arrived. I had to sign for it. The mail carrier watched me with the expression of someone who has delivered bad news in envelope form many times and never gotten comfortable with it. It was from a law firm in Phoenix. 3 pages. Dense language. The substance of it, once I read it twice and looked up 2 of the terms, was this. My son and his wife were filing to have me declared legally incapacitated. They were citing the cardiac event, my age, my living alone, and this part I had to read 4 times, a letter from a physician I had never heard of, claiming that a cognitive screening I had never taken showed significant deficits in executive function and financial judgment. They were moving to have themselves appointed as my legal guardians, which would give them control of my finances, my retirement accounts, my house that was paid off, my house that June and I had lived in for 27 years. I sat at the kitchen table, the same table where I'd had the heart attack, and I held those 3 pages, and I felt something move through me that I hadn't felt in a long time. Not sadness, not even anger, something older than both of those. I called Dwayne. He was there within the hour. He read the letter standing up at my kitchen counter. When he finished, he set it down very carefully, like it was something that might bite. Who's your attorney? He said. I used a guy named Tompkins for my will in the house. Estate planning. Does Tompkins do litigation? I don't think so. Then you need someone else. He picked up his phone. I know a woman in Shaker Heights. Family law, elder law, contested guardianship. She handled a situation for Gil's uncle 2 years ago. Very good, Dwayne. Let me make the call. Her name was Patricia. No, that's in the file. Her name was Sandra Okafor. She had an office on Lee Road, a wall of diplomas, and the particular kind of calm that comes from having won arguments in courtrooms for 20 years. She met with me 2 days later. The first thing she told me was that the physician's letter was the key. If we could challenge its validity, prove I had never been examined by this doctor, establish that the signature was either forged or obtained under fraudulent pretenses, the entire guardianship petition collapsed. Have you ever met a Dr. Ellison Crane? She asked. Never. His office is in Scottsdale. He specializes in geriatric assessment. She paused. He also happens to be the uncle of your daughter-in-law's college roommate. We found that in about 40 minutes of research. I sat with that for a moment. The architecture of it, the planning it required. This wasn't something my son had decided over a weekend. This had been in motion for a while, maybe since June died, maybe before. What do we do? I said. First, we get you independently evaluated, full cognitive and neurological workup, proper procedure, documented correctly. That becomes our counter-evidence. She folded her hands on the desk. Second, we file to have Dr. Crane's assessment disqualified on grounds of undisclosed conflict of interest. Third, we request the court investigate the circumstances under which that assessment was obtained. And if the court finds fraud? She looked at me steadily. Then this becomes a different kind of proceeding. The neurological evaluation took 3 hours at university hospitals. 2 physicians, a full battery of assessments. I named the months backward, drew connecting lines between shapes, recalled a list of 12 words 30 minutes after I'd heard them, and explained the steps to changing a car tire in sequential order. Afterward, the lead physician, a younger man with wire-rimmed glasses and a handshake like he meant it, told me my cognitive function was, in his words, entirely consistent with a healthy individual of your age with no meaningful deficits identified. I asked him to write that down. He smiled. We were going to regardless. The next 4 weeks were the quietest of my life in a particular way. Not peaceful, but suspended. Sandra worked. Dwayne checked in every few days, stopping by sometimes with takeout from a Greek place in Beechwood that he knew I liked, because I had mentioned once that June, and I used to go there on anniversaries. He didn't say that's why he brought it. He just brought it. My son called me during this period. Twice. The calls were different now. Less scripted, more searching, like he was checking for something he couldn't name. I was careful. Sandra had advised me not to discuss the legal matter directly, so I talked about the weather, about how the yard needed work, about whether the Cavaliers had any hope this season. My daughter-in-law did not call. The hearing on the guardianship petition was scheduled for a Tuesday morning in late April at the Cuyahoga County Probate Court on Ontario Street. I wore the suit I'd worn to June's funeral. I don't know why. It seemed right, like I was showing up for something that mattered. Dwayne drove me. Sandra met us on the steps. The courtroom was smaller than I expected. Wood paneling, fluorescent lights, the particular smell of institutional carpet. My son was already seated when I came in. He was in a dark blazer and he looked, this is the honest truth, he looked afraid. Not of me. Afraid in general. The way someone looks when they've started something they can't stop and only just understood that. His wife sat beside him, very still, very straight, the way she always sat when she was managing a situation. She didn't look at me when I entered. Sandra had filed the motion challenging Dr. Crane's assessment 16 days earlier. The judge, a woman in her early 60s named the Honorable Charlene Birch, who had been on the probate bench for 14 years, had read it. That was apparent from the first 60 seconds. Judge Birch looked at the opposing counsel, a man from a Phoenix firm who had flown in, and said, "Counsel, before we proceed, I want to address the matter of the Crane assessment. I have several concerns." It went on for 2 hours. By the end of the first hour, Dr. Crane's report had been formally disqualified. Judge Birch used the phrase, obtained under circumstances that raise serious questions of ethical propriety, and she said it looking directly at the opposing table, not at the ceiling. By the end of the second hour, the guardianship petition had been dismissed with prejudice. Then Judge Birch said something I wasn't expecting. She said, Given the documented connection between the evaluating physician and the petitioner's household, and given the representation that the subject of this petition was never examined by or even made aware of this physician, the court is referring this matter to the county prosecutor's office for review of potential elder fraud. The room was very quiet. I looked at my son. He had his hands flat on the table in front of him. His wife was whispering to their attorney, but my son wasn't listening to either of them. He was looking at the table. Or maybe at something underneath it. I didn't speak to him that day. Sandra had advised against it, and honestly, I didn't have anything that would come out right. But 2 weeks later, on a Saturday morning, I was sitting on the back porch with coffee when I heard a car in the driveway. I didn't move. Then I heard the side gate, then footsteps on the porch stairs, and when I looked up, my son was standing at the top of the steps alone. No briefcase, no wife. Just him, in jeans and a jacket I'd given him for Christmas 2 years ago, looking like a man who'd had a hard few weeks. "She's not here," I said. I meant his wife. "I know. I came alone." He put his hands in his pockets. "Can I sit down?" I didn't answer immediately. I looked at my coffee. I thought about June and what she would say, and how she always believed that the worst thing you could do was shut a door that might not need to be shut. "Pull that chair over," I said. He sat. For a while, neither of us said anything. The yard was starting to green up. A cardinal was doing something loud in the oak tree at the back fence. "She told me it was to protect you," he finally said. "After the heart attack. She said you weren't going to be able to manage on your own, and we needed to step in before something happened. She found a doctor I'd never met, and had him write a report saying I had cognitive deficits. I didn't know that part." His voice was flat in the way voices get when they're telling the truth about something that makes them look bad. "I didn't know how she got the assessment. I just knew there was one. You should have asked." "Yes." He didn't try to qualify it. I should have. The cardinal went quiet. The yard settled. "She's been the one handling our finances for years," he said. I know what it sounds like." He nodded. Looked at the oak tree. "I've been talking to someone. A counselor. Since the hearing." He paused. "There are things I've let her manage that I shouldn't have let her manage. Things I agreed to without asking enough questions." Another pause. "The loan. The 40,000. She told me you'd said not to worry about paying it back. I know now you never said that." I turned and looked at him directly for the first time since he'd sat down. "No," I said. "I never said that." He nodded once, slow. "I'm going to pay it back, however long it takes." I didn't say thank you. I didn't say it was fine. It wasn't fine. But there was something in how he said it. Not like a man apologizing to end a conversation, but like a man taking hold of something he intended to carry. "How'd you get here?" I asked. "You drive from Phoenix? Flew?" "I've been staying at the Marriott in Independence." "How long?" "Since Wednesday." I looked at him. Wednesday was 4 days ago. "You've been in town for 4 days," I said. "I didn't know if you'd see me." I drank the rest of my coffee. It was cold. "There's more in the pot," I said. He got up without another word and went inside to get it. The county prosecutor's office opened an investigation into Dr. Crane and the law firm that had filed the guardianship petition. Sandra told me the process would take months and the outcome wasn't certain, but that the referral alone had put enough pressure on the situation to make certain things happen quickly. Dr. Crane surrendered his license pending the investigation. The law firm sent a letter of withdrawal. My daughter-in-law did not accompany my son on his next visit, or the one after that. I don't know what's happening between them, and I'm not going to pretend I do. That's their business. What I know is that my son is getting himself a better picture of his own life, and that takes time, and that the only thing I can do is be here when he's ready to talk. Dwayne came by on a Sunday in May, unannounced, which he'd taken to doing in a way I'd stopped minding. He brought his 14-year-old daughter, Aaliyah, who'd apparently decided she wanted to be a structural engineer after he'd told her about me. She had a list of questions written on her phone that she asked me very seriously over lemonade on the back porch, whilst Dwayne sat in the other chair and said nothing, and just looked like a man who was glad to be somewhere. Before they left, Aaliyah asked if she could see the inside of the house. I said sure. She looked at everything, the bookshelves, the photographs, the technical drawings I still had framed on the study wall from projects I'd worked on 30 years ago. She stopped in front of a framed photo of the Conneaut Lake Bridge project from 1994. Stood there for a long time. "Did you design this?" she asked. "I was on the team that did." She looked at it another moment. "That's a good bridge," she said. "I don't know why that hit me the way it did. Maybe because June would have said exactly that. Maybe because it was the right thing to say, and she said it without knowing it was the right thing to say. Yeah, I said. It is. There are people in this world who are going to look at your hardest moment and calculate what they can take from it. That's a fact. The heart attack, the surgery, the 11 days in that hospital bed. My daughter-in-law looked at all of that and saw an opening. She almost got through it too. If I hadn't known Dwayne, if Dwayne hadn't been at that hospital that morning waiting for his partner, if a 22-year-old kid in Youngstown in 1998 hadn't shown up early to a job site and worked hard enough to earn a letter from the site supervisor, the whole thing might have gone differently. But here's what I've come to understand, sitting on that back porch in the mornings with the cardinal in the oak tree. Kindness is not a transaction. You don't give it to get it back. You give it because it's the right thing to do, and then you let it go out into the world. And sometimes, not always, but sometimes, it comes back around at the exact moment you need it. Not as a miracle, not as luck, as the natural consequence of treating people like they matter. That's not a platitude. That's a structural principle. The people who tried to break me were counting on me to stay down. They calculated that a 63-year-old man alone in a house with a scar on his chest and $47 in his wallet and a dead phone battery couldn't fight back. They forgot one thing. They forgot who was sitting in that chair next to me.